It's been 5 seconds, Ariel.
It's been 5 seconds. Oh shit. Hello. Good evening. Good morning. Who knows what time this goes out? I am a co-host, I guess. Yes, I'm co-host. My name is Ariel, and my co-host today is.
Hi, I'm Alex.
Is hi, Alex. Nice to meet you, Alex.
You need to know a little bit about me, don't you?
I have no idea who you are. Who the hell are you?
I'm Ariel's friend. That's who I am.
Do you want to be any more specific, or is that just it? Is that like...
No, that's like basically my entire
That's the
identity.
title. Okay. All right. Well, Alex, it's nice to meet you here. Yeah, see you here. Hear you here? Yeah, hear you here. That makes more sense. Well, you may notice there is no name. Actually, there might be a name. We're not too sure. But, you know, not all good things happen at first, and they take time, you know. Names take time. But...
Yeah, claimed
here we are.
Forever.
Claimed Ash. Actually, that actually was the first name I think I ever gotten, but I never used it because I don't know why I never used that. That's a different topic. Well, first up, actually, we kind of need to see. Well, kind of have to say what this is. You know, who are we? Well, we kind of say that. What this podcast is really about, and why are we really doing this? Well, this podcast isn't really. It's not professional in any sense. If anything, it is just a mock-up of
the
random ideas, rambles, and yeah, just who knows what else. But essentially, this podcast is more sort of a relaxed, chill sort of vibe. You know, we talk about different topics. The structuring, I guess, of this podcast per se is, for now anyway, we're going to keep it at sort of, we're splitting it into sort of 2 different sections for now. Make it more easier for us and whoever listens. But sort of the first, I guess, 30 minutes or so, 20 minutes, will basically be, or sort of free flow topics. Essentially anything that's on top of our mind, anything to ramble on. Sort of just an easy way to get into, you know, just talking about anything, because, you know, I always think, you know, everyone has quite a lot to say and to ramble about in certain situations. And then after that sort of little free flow topic, we, at the moment, as a sort of regular topic, sort of to, I guess, keep something, something regular throughout these podcasts, is at the moment we're doing reviews. So reviews of any media, so yeah, books, movies, TV shows, games even, anything like that. Some may take longer than others, like books, for example, or TV shows for that matter. So for now, anyway, the reviews will be more maybe movies, because they're not too hard in the sense of they don't take too long to watch. But that is essentially the structure, and essentially the time to do all this will vary accordingly. But again, look, this is all just us talking about anything really, and just, you know, just sparking some interest. But besides that, in terms of what to expect, we'll have the reviews, probably be in the second half. I'll probably, this will go out, well, if you're listening to this anyway, it is on YouTube, however you got here. I will put maybe timestamps to make it easier, because I know, you know, timestamps are pretty good, and we can just sort of time out when certain segments start, because obviously today is more of a introductory sort of one. We still will talk some stuff, but this is more just sort of outlining what this is about, really. But yeah, so we'll do reviews, sort of free flow ideas, I guess what to expect in terms of maybe audience. It would probably most likely be sort of our age, which is young adults, you know, university, anything, but for that matter, really anyone who likes the same interest as us. Like with the free flow anyway, that will basically allow for anyone really to listen, depending on what we talk about. You know, it could be ranging from some sort of like stories, or maybe like even just like events during like the day we do this, or just some stories about whatever happened last week or something, who knows. But in terms of when these come out, I guess. For now, we have sort of decided that it's going to be more of maybe a bi-weekly thing. But that depends on a lot of circumstances. So you'll have to keep an eye out for that. I will definitely find ways to, whoever listens, easy ways to keep up to date. Easy enough, like whoever listens, it shouldn't be too bad to find. But I will definitely pop something out there so then people know. But the podcast itself, will, I guess, what me and Alex aim anyway, it is more of a casual podcast. There's nothing really strict about it, no hard limits in certain segments and stuff like that. It's more, to be honest, it's more of an excuse just to talk, just a range of topics.
In private, particularly.
In private.
So we don't have people intruding.
Yes.
We have an excuse.
This is in private. However, people will listen to this, meaning that it's not private.
Yeah, but they can't.
But it was private
Conversation. They can think whatever they want in their private
they can think
privacy.
Yeah. Well, that's whatever they want. And again, it's also meant to, I guess, it's an excuse to talk, but also maybe learn a couple of things, because there's a lot of interesting things out there. I think there's interesting things out there. I scroll through social media and I see a couple of cool things that I may talk about, but that's later. But I think what we think anyway, maybe would be, I guess, the main draw, I guess, of the podcast, besides the casualness of it, is the idea to have a guest people just to join. These can and will include friends, and what I'm sort of aiming for anyway, if people are willing, viewers, any viewer who wants to join in the conversation. Because, as I said before, everyone has a lot of interesting things to say, and, with that, like, we could, who knows what we'd talk about, but for now, we probably will get somebody next week, 2 weeks' time. I don't know who it would be, and it'll probably be, maybe at least 3 people per podcast, so you can look forward to that. So there isn't sort of, I guess, a stagnant sort of, like we're just us two, I may get pretty boring, so that's why we get other people in, so it isn't boring, I guess.
Yes, we've got a very wide range of personalities at our disposal.
But that is essentially what the podcast really is. It's more of a casual talk with me and Alex, talking on a range of different topics, any random ones, and eventually throughout the podcast, it'll be on on the reviews. I guess I could say now, anyway, the review that we're doing today, anyway, is a recent movie I watched. It did come out 2 years ago, so sorry about that. But
I thought you said you were reading the book.
I did. I was thinking of reading it, but
I read the plot summary for the book.
I read the movie. Wait, I watched the movie. The movie is called The Circle. I think most people may have heard of it. Maybe not good things from it.
16% off on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, well, look, Gods of Egypt got however much, and that's a perfect
That's a masterpiece.
That is a masterpiece. And you will hear about that constantly, because it is the best movie of all time, obviously. It has everything a movie needs. Great CGI.
The 2017 film, not to be confused with the 2015 film, which is an American psychological thriller.
Actually, that reminds me. There may be swearing throughout this podcast, so I'm sorry. Adult themes will be relevant. English. So be mindful of that. I will try my best. Well, I'll try my best to keep the mature content.
You're gonna bleep my swear all the time.
Yeah. But it kind of, I like that. It slips. It just slips off the tongue. But
it just rolls out.
That happens.
Sometimes.
It just rolls off the tongue, easy. But that is essentially what this podcast is about. This unnamed podcast, as of this moment, of I guess you could say it is the 26th of January 2019, which is, as people know, in Australia Day. And I think that would be something interesting to talk about. But before we go on to that, Alex, have you got anything to add to this?
No.
Well, it seems I've covered most things, I hope. Who knows? If I didn't cover anything else, I will probably just write it in like the YouTube description because that's the easiest. And yeah, you'll have to read. But that is essentially what this podcast is and what it will become, hopefully in the future, to, get more people on, talk, and just generally relax. Gives us an hour just to talk. Might have 3 whole listeners at some point. Might have 3 whole listeners. Can you believe that? That'd be amazing.
That'd be quite fanatical.
That would be amazing. But, first we need 1 viewer, listener.
Of course. Pro tip. It's going to be one of us.
But whoever the first is, I think, that's a memorable moment.
We'll give you a full $1.
We'll give you a full $1
Since you probably know us IRL, we'll give you $1.
$1 in Monopoly money.
Just say, hey, just print off a coupon of you being the first view.
Yes.
And email it to us, and we'll send you $1.
Yeah, look.
It's coming out of Ariel's bank, of course.
Well, okay. We'll see. But yeah, we'll give you that $1 in Monopoly money, and that I guess that's probably a good.
Trying to move on to the Monopoly money thing, Ariel. No one plays Monopoly anymore. It's a dead game.
Are you kidding? People play Monopoly every day. It is one of the best family-friendly games of all time. People sit around, play with
people that they love,
boot,
and they don't love them anymore.
Yeah, people who once loved each other and now are split and never talk to each other ever again.
And realised that their relationship did not survive Monopoly.
No.
Relationships that do, those are strong relationships.
Yes, that's true. Well, I guess we can go to the next segment, which is Freeflow. There may be a little ringing sort of transition. I have no idea, and this is really awkward at the moment. Insert transition here. Well, Alex, it is the 26th of January, 2019.
Yes.
What did you do today?
I worked. I worked at my little newspaper shop, and I read the newspaper.
You read the newspaper. Any interesting topics? Anything that captured the mind? Anything special
just
of
talking
this day?
about all those bloody Australians that won the Order of the Cross, I think it's called.
I see.
All those people that were like heroes and stuff. Then there was a quiz in there.
Quiz?
About Australian history. Yeah, it was alright. A lot of the questions were kind of dumb, TBH. But
what were the questions?
It was just questions like, who was the youngest? Oh no, sorry. Who was named the youngest, like, Australian of the year and also Australian of the year? And it was Kathy Freeman. And I was like, eh.
How old?
I don't know what age she won it. You can probably Google it. Let's Google Kathy Freeman. But she won youngest Australian of the year and Australian of the year in the same year or something like that. And that was the question.
I see. Well, that's interesting, I guess.
I guess.
What do you think, actually, Alex? I obviously this is a topic that comes up nowadays, especially on today. What do you think of Australia Day's importance to the Australian people? Controversial topic, of course.
Let's not talk about politics, says Ariel before
it's not politics.
Before the podcast.
It's
a pretty partisan issue, I would say.
Yeah, well,
I don't know. I kind of have I kind of like the people that have we should make the date May the 8th, so it's like made. But at the same time,
yeah,
wasn't it? It was like what Captain Cook in Byron Bay. Was that the reason why it was this?
I have no idea why.
That's the reason why we chose this date. But I remember actually one of my customers came in today, and he told me that before it was either World War I or World War II. Australia Day was actually in April and not January.
April? Why the hell is it in April?
Maybe it wasn't April. Maybe it's August. Who knows? But he said it wasn't in January.
What day would have been on April?
Look, I don't know. Let's have a look. Just
Anzac
here we
Day?
go.
Maybe. Actually, no, I don't think so. Well, if it was before, then it wouldn't have been Anzac Day.
It was changed, though.
Unless they changed that. Because Anzac Day is on the 25th, 26th, isn't it? Hang on, am I getting that wrong? When's Anzac Day? Anzac Day is on the 25th of April.
Yeah.
So I don't think maybe... Who knows? I don't know.
Listen, maybe this guy was just, completely
There's a
talking
lot
out
of
of his ass. Who
interesting
knows?
people out there. Yeah, well, there's a lot of interesting people like that. But is April? I'm just trying to think what day else would have been in April. But who knows? But back to that topic. What is your personal opinion on it, Alex?
I don't care. Jesus Christ.
You don't care. So the classic.
I mean, I get it might be important to Aboriginals and I feel
Obviously,
bad for
yeah.
Aboriginals, of course, but I mean, it's just a freaking day, man. Jesus.
Yeah. There's a lot of arguments for and against. I don't like getting intertwined with a lot of those things, as many people don't. But, that being said, I get... It's obviously that thing of it's always been on this day. What's the point of changing it? That's the sort of thing. Again, why would they just change it? Obviously, there's reasons for that. But also, obviously they have surveys that go out, asking, what would you like? Would you like May the 8th or whatever, mate? Or would you like it on some other day? Or something like that. But, probably most of the time people don't care and just put whatever. So that is sort of what happens. But, I don't know, for me anyway, Australia Day's always been, ever since I can remember, I have been doing Australia Day, and I haven't had any problems with it being on that day. If anything, it's good because when it was during school, you'd get a day off. But, when it's on a weekend...
You're racist.
It's on a Monday or something, the day off. But, it's what it is. Which is obviously
since you are a white Australian and not an Aboriginal like me.
Yes.
I think specifically that you don't understand the struggle that I'm going through. And obviously, it's Invasion Day, quite simple.
It is Invasion Day. But, I'm not going to say anything on that. But... Obviously, there are some things about Australia Day that people don't particularly like.
No. Good on it.
Yes, good
Flex
on it.
your democratic rights.
Yes, the Democratic Society. Why are we talking about politics? This isn't what we're here for. I came here specifically not to talk about politics.
Oh, you can't say that.
Well, I just did.
You're the one that brought it up.
I just said it. Okay, so let's move on to something else that isn't politics. Well, actually, I think, considering it is the start of the year, I am, of course, and Alex, in our second year of uni, both doing IT, focusing on, what's it called again? Computer science. I was like, what the heck was it called? Computer science, which is essentially computer science. And stuff that you do on the computer, like programming and stuff like that. Stuff that you think programmers do, essentially.
Yes.
What do you think of the course so far, Alex?
Yeah, it's alright.
It's alright, is it? Would you have to
no
elaborate?
Strong feelings either way.
No. I see. Well, that
I've been enjoying it so far, if that means.
It is enjoyable, I will definitely say. It is hard, I won't doubt that, in certain respects. Especially with, programming is not easy. It is pretty frustrating and hard. But once it's working, that's when it is good, obviously. Just like any other job, you don't want it not working. But no, for me anyway, university is with the IT course anyway. I've done so far basic like C programming. We've done Python. We've done database stuff. We've also done, what else have we done? We did, what else did we do? Like design of IT. Also, we did, me and Alex did anyway, we did the, what's it called? Computer security? Information security. Which is a very interesting topic. It was very introductory.
Very introductory.
It's very introductory, the unit that we did anyway. And the point of it was obviously just to introduce the main concepts behind it. I thought it was that was a pretty good unit, because like sometimes I do enjoy certain units for certain things. Like for example, in the information security one, we had to do sort of I guess questions each week, but they were all about sort of like obviously about security stuff in general, with like all the different things like identity thefts or stuff about like morals and stuff like that, and all the problems with security and stuff like that, ethical standpoints, and all the problems that have arisen with IT from I think it was the Red Blood. It's called Red Blood. Is that the right name? I can't remember what it's called, but it's the Plus, and they do like blood donations.
Red Cross.
Red Cross, yeah. What did I say?
You said Red Blood.
Red Blood. That didn't make any sense for me. Red Cross.
Interesting cover from a vampire.
Yeah. But no, Red Cross. We I remember we did questions on talking about a problem that happened where all the information was taken, essentially, or like people's accounts were taken, a lot of their private information about sort of certain things that relate to their blood in terms of obviously what type, and also other questions that are very private. But those are interesting topics to talk about, because like this actually sort of leads into the review with the circle, but the idea of privacy and sort of security, and obviously you want to have as much privacy as much as security, but you can't have both to their full potential, because some of them have to sort of give way for other things. So like in order to have something really secure, obviously you want to have all your stuff secure, but when you think about it, in security, you want to know what bad people are doing, and you always want to know like TV, not TV, TV cameras, CCTV and stuff like that, and all that. But that being said, also with privacy, you don't want always to be watched, right? Because if there were all these cameras everywhere that watch people for security's sake, so then it would know when somebody was doing something bad, but then that invades on privacy. But that sort of goes into the review anyway later. But that is an interesting thing that sort of always comes up, and I don't think there is a definitive answer to what is the best way, because in reality there's sort of advantages and disadvantages for both, and both are required in certain situations. But yeah, that's sort of an interesting moral sort of dilemma. And there's a lot of books and movies that go into that, but we'll lead into that later. But what about you, Alex? What do you think on other units anyway? Like, was there any other standout units so far? Obviously, we've only done a year, so there's nothing too extraordinary. All of it is basically introductory stuff. There's nothing that captures like the real it captures the fundamentals, but nothing really beyond that.
Databases were fun.
Databases, actually, database was good, because database is really important, especially like considering how much information is out there. It is really important, because how the hell are you going to keep track of it all? You're going to have to keep track of it somewhere, and obviously you have to store that information somewhere, and there's big places for that. and then there's problems with like accessing it or how private is the information because it's all stored together. Who knows all this information? Ideally, you don't want anyone else to know it unless they have some proper authorization to access that database information. But, considering the information that you've given to any database, how do you really know?
What were those like security goals? It was like authorization.
I have no idea. Authorization, identification,
that was definitely one.
And
there was one more.
Authentication.
I think authentication and authorization were two of the same.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think so.
I think those were the three, though. Actually.
Yeah. But yeah, like stuff like that, like trying that sort of refines if obviously the right person is accessing the information and stuff like that. But how do you really know if you're the only one who's getting it? Because it is stored in one place. Who knows who could get that? And that's sort of a thing. But then, you kind of put your safety, really. You put your safety into these people who keep these databases. And there's obviously plenty of things that make accessing databases harder for people who aren't authorized. And people who are authorized, they have access, but usually they would have some sort of authentication sort of method to go through that. So then they ideally know exactly what this person is, or what they're getting and who they are, in terms of accessing data. But sort of, that was the first year anyway. Second year, I get to choose, and we get to choose minors, sort of 2 minors, or we could have chosen a second major, or I think it's 8 electives, but I chose 2 minors. This year,
you chose 2?
Yeah, you get to choose two different minors.
You told me about one of them.
Yes, so I've told you one. So the first one, anyway, it's an IT one. It is intelligent systems. The only problem with intelligent systems is I have to wait until semester 2 to do a math unit in order to have the prerequisites to do the other units, which is a shame because it means it sort of messes up a bit my timetable, but that happens. I'm doing intelligent systems, which is essentially it is all about robots, AI, any sort of anything to do with that bracket, machine intelligence.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm doing it anyway is obviously it's cool, but
you have a very great history with robots.
I have a very great history with robots. I remember them very vividly. I think about 2-3 years ago was probably my most memorable moment of robots and machine intelligence with...
We just couldn't get those stupid Lego
what are they
things
called?
working.
They're Lego Mindstorm...
NXTs.
I was going to say Roblox, but that's a completely different thing.
Roblox?
No, because it just came up in my mind. No. Lego Mindstorms, I think. I don't know what they're technically called. Or isn't
they
it
were
like...
NXTs, were they?
NXTs, yeah, that's right, something like that. But no, we got to do that for school anyway, when we were at school. We had to build a couple of robots, Lego robots, for a competition. Well, it was more for the assessment, but it's also the competition was part of it, where we had to go to a university and test our robot in certain... Well, for us in here, we had to test it in soccer. There was another one, which I really think we probably should have done, because I think that one would have been a bit easier.
Was that the
follow the line?
Course?
Yeah, the obstacle course. But that being said, what I heard, it was actually a lot harder in certain things. But no... Oh yeah, both of them would have pretty hard things. But
well,
no,
I mean, to be fair,
soccer.
we had to actually in the program that we used, there was an easy interface where you essentially used small little blocks to program the robot, but we had to actually manually type out all of the commands for it.
Oh yeah,
which was extremely difficult. Considering that, I mean, even when I fucking got home, my dad was just like, "Why didn't you just make the same program?" The code for one, and then just make a brick version of the other one, which unfortunately we weren't smart enough to think of at the time.
No,
but we're very honourable students. We don't break the rules.
No, we don't. But no, and that at that time, really, that was 3 years ago. I would say now. I wasn't very good. I didn't really know what I was doing, and that was the most frustrating thing. But no, oh god, I remember like for the soccer thing. Anyway, we had one of our soccer. So we had two, which was the goalie and the striker essentially, and we were pitted against other people. So how it works is, if no one knows how this works, is with the soccer, there's a ball, and I think it's infrared, so basically your robots have an infrared sensor that detects the ball, and depending on whatever you coded, it would go for it. But there are different colours, essentially, on the board. I think there's like white, green, and a lighter green, and there's black or something, and they basically set out the entire board, and you would basically code your robot to react to certain things if it had the ball, or if it was, for example, if it was the goalie, it would have to stay within the bounds of the goals, which I think there was like a white line around it, and basically your robot would detect the like line or the colours, and it would always know to go in that, and if it ever saw the ball, then it would, actively try and defend. That's the ideal thing.
Did I do the goalie, or did I do the striker?
So, in terms of building, I think me and someone else did the striker, I think, and you
it was
did
you and Steven, wasn't it?
Yeah, me and Steven. And you and... I can't remember who else was in our group.
It was me and Jared, I think it was. Or Ryan. Was it Ryan?
Was it Ryan? I can't remember.
It was either Ryan or Jared. No, Jared did the obstacle course. It was definitely Ryan.
Yeah, but you did the goalie in terms of building. And I remember we did all the coding for everything, but man, it just never would work. And I remember the night before, I was literally up all night trying to freaking just work it so it would like move forward and hit the ball, and that was it. And that was like the hardest thing ever. I had no idea what I was doing. And considering the programming, I don't even know what it was really. I think it was just, maybe it was like a language specifically for it, but I can't remember what it was. But oh god, like I spent forever, and it still never worked. And I remember the day, we were just plagued with problems. Like one time, like the striker would just spin on the spot, and essentially the other team could just get free goals. I remember other times.
Did you see that fucking bullshit one that those dudes made? That was
there was one.
It was like a squid. That's the best way for me to explain it.
The thing,
it's like a squid upright.
I remember about it is, so there's certain rules. There's certain. Oh, actually, I remember I think it was the goalie that was too big.
Yeah, it was my rule.
And we just
it was too big, so we just broke off the back wheel, and then immediately after they finished sizing it up, we put the back wheel back on.
It's fine, no one noticed. But I felt like, God, there's some others there that were massive, and I was like, how the hell? Like one of them, and I don't know if there's a height limit, but there was one that was pretty freaking big, and it used, from what I remember, it used 3 motors, which I don't think that's allowed.
I honestly think that all the rules they gave us were just to stay within the boundaries of our assignment, because we did it for an assignment rather than as an actual hobby.
Yeah,
so.
But yeah, so one of them was like, it had like 3 motors, and essentially it would use the motors to move in terms of I think it had like tank track wheels. I don't think it had actual wheels, because it could move literally like forward, backwards, side to side, and it would just literally steamroll any other fucking robot. But I remember it wasn't a very good 2 days. I remember them vividly, and yes, it was definitely hard, but I think it was valuable lessons made, that it seems robots hate me, but I aim to fix that, and hopefully robots will no longer hate me before they inevitably kill everyone.
Yes.
Because obviously that is going to happen.
Precisely.
That is precisely what will happen. But also the other unit is I'm doing for this semester is it's a bit wacky in terms of like why it's sort of like I'm doing IT but I'm doing this, but no, I'm doing creative writing. The reason why is, well, I think it's interesting. It's introductory, so it's nothing like major in terms of like specifically focusing on different writing styles, but it's a very introductory sort of creative writing minor. I do write a lot. I do, time to time, like I read a lot. I also, I write a couple of, short stories here and there. Nothing great. If anything, all of them are terrible and shit and make no sense. even to me, they make no sense. But I'm still doing them.
That's why
I'm learning. That's why I'm doing it. So then it can be a little bit more understandable. That is the aim. I'm expecting to maybe, instead of knowing just the first sentence, maybe the second sentence. And then I'll be happy of my stories. But, who knows? For all I know, it is probably the worst minor of all time, and I'll never want to do it, and then I get out of it. But I am actually pretty excited for it. I'm excited because it is something sort of that I actually really enjoy, which is just writing, even though my writing is terrible. But I enjoy it nonetheless. And who knows? It might be good, might be terrible, might not do it, might do it. Who knows? You'll find out throughout the year, I guess, because I will probably say a couple of things about it. Yeah, I probably will talk about it a lot, because I'm assuming there'll be a lot of writing things, and maybe, I will say a couple of things I wrote, and people can critique me on how terrible my stuff is. But
you've gotten quite a lot of practice, I would say.
Yes, I think yes. Especially, me and Alex, and other people play a little-known game of D&D, which is Dungeons & Dragons, obviously. Role-play game. And I am the DM, so I do spend a lot of time building the story, the structure anyway, so then they can play in it. Obviously, I don't want to talk too much about it, because we are currently doing a campaign. We are doing Storm King's Thunder, because it is a pretty cool one, and there is a lot to come. It's a very big campaign, and it expends a lot on the world of Faerun, which is set in Torel, which is one of the D&D worlds. I do a lot of writing in terms of that. A lot of sort of writing about, obviously, where they're going, or even sometimes, like, short stories that probably sometimes intertwine, but I don't want to spoil any of those here. Or maybe I might in the future when it's all done, because there are a lot of things I do write for it. But we are sort of running on time in terms of this, so we will move on to the next section. Alright, Alex, so, the review. So this is a regular topic, for now anyway, that we have sort of decided on, because it's easy to do, it's not too hard to work on, and because, depending on the media, it's not too hard to go through, and it is pretty easy to access in terms of, like, doing it as a regular thing. But that being said, it could change, depending on what we deem would be interesting, or if people are listening, they can decide if they want this to continue. But the movie that we are doing, review, thing that we're doing is called, I'm just getting something up, is called The Circle. It was made in 2017. It is a drama, sort of science fiction film. It did get a 16% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 5.3 on IMDb. So it is alright in terms of IMDb, and probably terrible in terms of Rotten Tomatoes. But we all know, I think Rotten Tomatoes has some pretty dodgy people, obviously Gods of Egypt, they obviously... I just don't even think they watched it. I think they didn't even watch it. Oh, I just realised Gods of Egypt actually has 15%. So The Circle has 1% more.
The Circle? Oh, no.
No, it's one less than The Circle. But in IMDb, it is 0.1 more than The Circle. So it's a bit of a weird one, because obviously Gods of Egypt is the best film of all time. But that is a different topic. But so we watched The Circle, which is essentially about all about IT, and all about sort of the idea of privacy, and the idea of just, I guess, also like centralization of a lot of IT stuff these days anyway. The cast anyway, if anyone knows, obviously there's Tom Hanks in it, the lovable Tom Hanks, Emma Watson, and a couple of other people.
Oswald's in it. Jesus.
John Boyega. Though I feel like John Boyega wasn't really in the film I think he was in there for like max maybe like 5 minutes.
John Boyega is one of the main characters.
Yeah, like obviously when you think about it, like there's a pretty, I guess, an A-list sort of star here. There's Tom Hanks, Emma Watson, and John Boyega. Karen Gilligan is obviously, I guess she's a pretty high star now, considering she's in Avengers. But before that, she was in Doctor Who. That I do like Doctor Who, just want to say. And there's a couple of other people, like you said, Patton Oswalt, and a couple of other people that I don't really know. But
you watch Doctor Who?
Yes, I do. I haven't watched the recent ones. I haven't watched the one with what's his name? The Peter something. Is the Doctor
a female yet? Wasn't that a thing?
Yes, so she's a female.
About.
She is, well, yeah. The Doctor is a female now. I think they're stopping for now anyway. I think it resumes maybe in time. But no, yeah, there's a female. You know, I haven't watched it ever since Matt Smith left because I just sort of stopped watching it because I don't know, I guess I just stopped watching it. I do want to watch it again, but that's a different topic. But The Circle, back on topic, a lot of it is, I guess, also about sort of corruption also in terms of corruption in the IT stuff that sort of manifest in the people, essentially, the people, the main cast, and what we assume is the rest of the world sort of giving up their privacy, and basically all it is obviously
that's the important part of the story.
Willingly. Like I do have a couple of things that like I do want to talk about, and with these reviews anyway, there will be sort of there'll be some in-depth things that I will definitely talk about, and Alex probably will too, but probably more on the side of maybe what they actually talk about, or the questions they raise, which are obviously mainly what the movies are about. Like The Circle isn't really
talking about all the symbolism in Surf's Up. A lot of really important symbolism in that film.
Yeah, very, very important symbolism.
Shia LaBeouf's masterpiece.
But with The Circle anyway, I will be honest, I don't think it was a very good film. And I will say some reasons why. However, I do say that I don't know if this... Good, or... Yeah, the message it gave was much better. It was the message it gave, I think...
The book sounds a lot more interesting than the film.
Yeah, with the message of the film is definitely a more interesting thing about it, but I think that sort of, in a way, sort of makes the film not, like, terrible, because there's a reason why the film is made how it is, because it is meant to make these questions and the message. But in terms of the actual film itself, and there's a couple of things I do want to talk about. The main thing, and me anyway, as someone who likes reading or watching films or anything like that, I'm a big person who just enjoys characters more than most other things, and I think a lot of people are the same. I like
important story structure.
Yeah, I like character a lot of character stuff, like anything to do with characters in terms of like them developing. Obviously, I like characters who develop over time in terms of a lot of the impacts, and the film makes proper impacts on the characters. Yeah, that can be anything, but not more like in some movies, it's more sort of there is the characters, but maybe it's focused on other things, but they don't really shift the character in any sense. This film, I feel like it does delve into a little bit of character development with the main character, which is May, played by Emma Watson, who essentially, this is what I'm gathering, obviously this is my review,
gains employment,
is that she sort of, throughout the film, she sort of loses connection with the people she knows. For example, there is Annie. So Annie is played by Karen Gilligan. She is the, I believe she's like a marketing person of The Circle. Which The Circle, I should probably point out, The Circle is essentially, think of it as, it is just where everything, all your social media or all your IT stuff, all your medicals, all your government or what, not government, sorry, or like, all the sort of, all your accounts are sort of in this one place where everything is handled. It's essentially, The Circle is essentially the whole of society in terms of being on an account or something, and everyone knows essentially about everyone else because information is freely available on people but that gets into a bit more in the film. But in terms of so Annie is she's the marketing. I think she's just a marketing person. I'm not too sure what the position is. And May is essentially, she is just this. She had like a job beforehand, where she was just not doing very much as some IT consultant or something, and then she got a job through Annie, and then she was able to get into the circle, and then she essentially becomes like the same job in terms of consulting, but obviously there's more to it in terms of like the way the circle handles it. But back to May anyways, as a character, definitely I feel like throughout the film she does definitely lose sort of that connection with people, and that's sort of, I guess, like for example with Annie, as she is a lot more eventually throughout the film she becomes a lot more I guess like stocked up with a lot of things to do. She's like very busy. She in the film it's clearly seen she's sort of like, she's obviously really tired, and the point of that is that she's sort of, as the marketing, she has to go to like all these different places and she doesn't really get to stop. And Annie doesn't really talk to May that much throughout the first maybe 20 minutes of the film. They do talk a lot, but then after that there's like barely some talking. Then there's also another person, Mercer, which is essentially the old friend of May. Sort of throughout the film sort of becomes more of a second thought in the sense, because it is all focusing on May as a character, and not anything else like outside of May really. But with Mercer, he's like this guy who doesn't really deal, he doesn't want all this logical stuff, but sort of the way that, because she's losing all these connections with people, it's sort of ample opportunity for the circle to use her as a sort of as the sort of cornerstone for what their thing is, which is, I can't remember what it's called. I think it's just like transparency thing, which essentially what happens is May becomes transparent, which is essentially you see, well, anyone watching sees basically what she does like throughout her daily life. So you see her go to breakfast or go do other stuff, activities and stuff. Obviously there's some times when it's not recording because of obvious reasons, but most of the time the point of it is that you basically know what she's doing 100% of the time, really, even when she's sleeping, which is really weird, but whatever. But in terms of like the losing connections with people, it sort of makes all those other people sort of just slip into the background and not really become I don't know, I guess they just don't really become much in the film, besides more just sort of this person was at the start of the film, now he doesn't really do much else. But with, I guess, other characters anyway, there is John Boyega, who plays a character called Ty, and Ty is actually one of the original founders of the Circle. But in the film, he is sort of this really weird, mysterious figure that just somehow just drops in and out every now and then. They seem to just like, the actual two owners sort of just let him do whatever. He just roams around the facility and just like drops a couple of like moral and ethical points down, just sort of saying like, obviously what the Circle here is doing is terrible, but that is like all he does. He just says they're doing bad things. It's sort of, for me anyway, doesn't really, besides him just being this sort of phantom that just sort of roams the facility and just says like, the Circle's doing bad things, you should stop them doing that, and he just sort of slips away to the background, and then he comes at the end, then he slips away again. But yeah, I definitely think his character was sort of underdeveloped because he didn't really do much. There's also Tom Hanks, who plays Bailey. I can't remember his first name, but they refer to him as Bailey anyway. He is, think of him as like the Steve Jobs sort of person on stage, sort of hyping everything up. And I think Hanks does a good job in it. He does a pretty good job at playing as the villain this time, in terms of, instead of, being this guy who's always like somehow gets his entire life screwed by either getting stuck on an island or whatever, or trying to run away. But yeah, with, I guess, most of the characters, and I think there's a point to why I think they're like this, but they do feel very rushed, and sort of almost shallow in terms of the relationships that are built between the different characters. Like May sort of just loses connection with other people. She does develop a sort of, like, I guess, tutor mentor sort of relationship with Bailey, Tom Hanks. But besides that, I feel like everyone else is sort of just a second thought and don't really do anything else. But the reason I feel like there's a reason why these characters aren't sort of these fully developed anyway, as like many other movies, because it's like the point that like people are sort of losing connection with everyone, and that's sort of like obviously a real thing in terms of people start losing connection with certain people. But there's IT, essentially social media, that sort of stops this. But there are problems to that depending on, some people don't ever really want to be known again, or certain things like that. But yeah, like, in terms of, I think there's obviously a point to maybe why these characters aren't, like, fully built in terms of, like, these people really talk and they develop. It's more they're sort of, a lot of them become the background, essentially. But, like, because I know you didn't watch the film, but with the plot summary, I don't think it probably delves into that too much.
No, I thought the plot summary was quite interesting, though. I thought, it mentions that, originally the organization that she is, hired at essentially, develops, the technology to, essentially Twitch stream 24/7 what people are doing.
So that's what she does, and,
transparency. It says that, I don't know, I just think that's interesting, because, I remember in the plot summary that I read, it said that, politicians wore them in the sake of quote-unquote transparency.
Yeah, so, there's different...
And I thought... but if I may just continue here, I thought it was interesting that they would... I thought it was really interesting how the book brought up a point that many people would consider to be almost good, Like, it's good that politicians are transparent and tell you their intentions and everything.
Yeah.
And it's twisted it in a way that makes it so creepily invasive.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really interesting point.
In the film, anyway, there is a scene where the actually I can't remember. I think she does. There's a politician who's sort of supporting the Circle in terms of their transparency thing, where people live stream themselves online. I can't 100% remember, but I think she definitely, the politician anyway, was sort of going to do the transparency thing, but I can't remember if she actually does. But yeah, like, obviously that's sort of like the point that they were raising, is that, like, yes, the politician is, like, obviously marketing it all and everything, but also that obviously it's showing who this politician is. But again, this politician is just another human with their own daily stuff. But then it also strikes up sort of like, what do these people do? Or it doesn't really delve into, like, other people. It just centralizes on May, the main character anyway in the film.
Well, it's essentially a homage to her transition from what many people would consider to be a stereotypical break-the-mold good guy. I mean, have you ever read 1984?
I haven't read it because I didn't get to read it.
Have you seen the movie?
I have only seen a little bit of it. I haven't seen it all.
Okay, so
I know the basic premise, I think.
Yeah, the premise is very easy to understand, but I'm just saying that in that novel, the main character was against the societal norm of what was being said, as in he was essentially what the state in the book would consider a thought terrorist, and you expect that this main character would also be the same and go against and be like, hey, transparency isn't always a good thing when it's taken to such a heavy extreme. But no, she actually succumbs to the social pressure, and she actually becomes, one of the people that advocates for that kind of technology to exist, and even to be used as well.
Yeah, in the film with the Circle anyway, May
they
is
essentially groom her, don't they?
Yeah, so they they definitely. Well, she definitely comes across that. Well, there's a big thing that she sort of says is that privacy anyway is a it's like privacy is a criminal offense and secrets are lies, and people
Yeah.
should be open and sort of basically there shouldn't be a fine line between public and private, and instead it should just be one thing. And in the film, obviously it's like, you probably think about it, and the way it is definitely portrayed, it sort of makes you feel like this is a terrible idea, because it's sort of like, in terms of privacy anyway, like, obviously, you know, people are private because they want their private life, you know, people don't want to see what everyone's doing. Sometimes it's just because it's boring. Sometimes it's just because, look, I don't want you watching
Maybe
what
I've
I'm
got
doing.
weird things that I look at and I don't want you to see, that some would consider to not be socially acceptable.
Yeah, with the privacy stuff anyway, like the film itself, and I think the same with the 1984 anyway, it's very thought-provoking in terms about technology. And the biggest thing about it is, I feel like, yeah, the story caters more to the actual theme than the actual film. I don't think the film is very good, but again, as I said, there's reasons to why the film isn't as good. The biggest thing it comes up with is the idea of privacy, is that should there just be no privacy, and should it just be everyone is transparent, basically everyone knows what everyone's doing, there's no secrets, there's no like hidden stuff, everyone knows if, like, basically what everyone's doing. There's like, basically with the circle, as it is like a big social media sort of network, and it basically stores all these different accounts, and there's a thing in it where they have a meeting, and the meeting with May and stuff, and she talks about like, because obviously this is an American film, so this is a little bit different, but it is still sort of relevant to us anyway. But there's the thing about voting in terms of the population, like compared to like the voters and stuff. There's not as many voters really, in terms of like the proportion anyway. And what they propose in the circle is that why not, whoever signs up an account for the circle, they also have to vote, basically. They have to vote on any elections and stuff like that. But then it gets to the point also, why not they go like a step further and stuff, that why not everyone is obviously everyone has to vote, but everyone sort of, I think, knows who they vote for and stuff like that. And, you know, there's a reason why when you vote, you're in like a little booth, so no one else sees you. Because obviously people want to vote for whoever they want, and keep that private, but in the circle it's like, well, it's not really private, because, you know. But then also that comes up with the issue, if everything isn't private, and everyone knows what everyone votes for, what if, like, for example, your friend, like, for example, if you, Alex, voted for someone I didn't really like as a leader.
Unlikely.
Yeah, I know, but, like, if that was a thing, that can happen, it would definitely cause a lot of, maybe not a lot of conflict, but it would definitely cause that little tension. It's like, well, this guy voted for, like, the guy who I didn't want to win. Because... I
swear, Ariel, it was an accident that I voted for Clive Palmer. I didn't realise what I was doing.
Damn.
I thought it said Labour.
Oh, I see. Yeah, righto. But, like, that's an interesting thing is, with the voting stuff, that means everyone basically knows who everyone votes for, and then, you know, sometimes that does, because when you're voting for someone, obviously there's reasons why you vote for them, because of, you know, what they say, but what they do, and then that also, you know, if somebody knows about that, and they're like, oh, actually, like, you think like this, like, it also is the thing, like, so you're, as a person, think like this is what you would rather want, but then as another person's like, hang on, I don't really know about that, and then eventually maybe tension rises and blah blah blah, and people split and whatever. But thankfully that's not a thing today, so it's a private thing. But in the circle, I definitely think that would be a problem, because that would mean that people would just know whoever votes for, and then that could basically create tensions between people. But another thing, which is the transparency stuff, is also linked with, I guess, in the 1984 with Big Brother, is that everyone is basically watched, and you know that you're watched, and it's also because of that, like, how your behaviors change, obviously, because obviously when you're sort of, I guess, on stage being watched, or even like now, for example, our voices, you know, there's reasons to why our behaviors are like this. I don't want to be watched. I don't want. Well, if I was watched, I kind of Actually, well, if you were watched, actually, you would want to know you would be watched, obviously. I think, I guess.
As opposed to if I was watched, I wouldn't want to know that I wasn't being watched.
Yeah. I think you would want to know that you had watched. Because, well, that's that behavior thing is... Like, there are things today that governments and that do watch. Obviously, a big thing is metadata on phones or telecommunications. And also what ISPs pick up on internet traffic. They don't take everything that you take, but they do log a certain metadata that doesn't... It's information about the information you've watched, essentially. Like, how long you were on that page for, or when did you access it, or stuff like that. But like then, that is also a thing that we are always being watched on the phone technically because of metadata, obviously to a degree, but we are still being listened to when you're on the phone. But like it's a hard thing to sort of, in terms of what I said earlier with privacy and security, is obviously the security thing's a big thing is would you rather have all your privacy so you no one knows basically anything about you unless you give it for any reasons, but that does mean that obviously that can mean there's some shifty things going on, obviously crimes and stuff like that. But then if you say, well, why not if we have a lot more security, that would obviously basically mean that you would know more about people because you would know like these people would be criminals because they're doing certain things, but then that compromises your privacy, meaning that there isn't really any privacy left. And, there is advantages and disadvantages to both. I don't think there's a definitive answer for what
I will concede that there are advantages and disadvantages to both, but I believe in the absolute right to privacy. I feel like just some people deserve the right to not disclose information that they don't want to. Yeah.
And yeah, actually saying that with the sort of like, I guess, human rights anyway, in the film, The Circle, it does talk about the like the human right with people should know like basically all the knowledge and stuff like that. And that is sort of like, that's another thing with, I guess, rights and laws that they can be interpreted in certain ways. So in The Circle, it talks about the right to knowing like knowledge and stuff like that. That means that depending on which way you're seeing it is, does that mean I know everyone stuff, like every bit of knowledge? Or does it mean like the knowledge that I only need?
Because it was like absolute knowledge is the most important thing, or something along those lines.
But like that's an interesting thing also.
It does actually, the book itself does remind me a lot of 1984 in that. It seems to follow very, almost similar plot lines. Yeah. But I think the main difference is that in 1984, it's about state control, but this is a private organization.
Yeah, this is a private organization that is controlling things.
Which is obviously a state.
And I've watched 1984, but I'm assuming maybe there's some shifty business going on. But The Circle...
I'm not sure there's any business. I think it's literally an entirely totalitarian state. If I remember correctly, unless I'm remembering it... All I remember is that, I don't think I remember any trading, because all the things they got were given out to them by the Ministry of Production, I think it was. And, there wasn't any private... obviously, it was a critique of communism, so, of course, there would be any private ownership. But, it was just interesting that I read the plot summary for this one, and it seemed to be about private organizations.
In The Circle, it is about corruption also, that sort of almost... it is part of, like, the message anyway, but the main two owners of The Circle, which is Bailey and I can't remember what the other guy is, Tom something, I can't remember his name, but the two original owners, I think they're called like the Wise Men or something, they're actually doing like shifty stuff. It's all like corrupted in the sense that they're all collecting this data for whatever reason, and then they make other people, obviously, why don't you go transparent, so I can know all your information, stuff like that. And then eventually gets to the point at the end of the film where May, the main character, I guess, sort of realizes this. She realizes that obviously that the two owners are probably doing some shifty things, thanks to the mysterious tie. Bailey and Tom are sort of using this data for whatever means, and they're doing all these private stuff on their emails and stuff, and then May sort of reveals all this to everyone, like, whoa, what the heck's going on, these people using all that information. But then it's like, she's like, well, clearly this is bad, everyone should go transparent now, so we know what everyone's doing. And then ends the film with...
Yeah, because the film almost gave a glimpse of hope with that point, because...
It sort of does, but it's like, hang on, let's continue with this transparency thing.
Yeah, well, reading the plot summary for the book, she's far more, like, into the ideology of...
Yes.
Keeping it up, because, I mean, she literally... Obviously, the guy comes up to her and says, hey, this is what they're doing. And I don't know if that was in the movie, but according to this, it says that he was the original inventor and founder of the company.
Yeah.
She actually rats him in to the other two.
She does, yeah.
And I guess the book had the main character far more, I would even say, brainwashed than the movie version.
Maybe, yeah.
She genuinely seemed to believe the actual idea.
But she is brainwashed in sort of like sticking to this no privacy idea. And yeah, she sort of screws over everyone, really. And then it sort of ends the film with everyone is, like, being transparent. There's no definitive answer, and there's obviously reasons to why both are better. And it also depends on maybe what the circumstances. So, for example, let's think about, like, military stuff, you want it to be very private, but you also want it to be very secure at the same time.
Surveillance became a very hot topic issue post 9/11.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, since 9/11, there's been a lot of stuff like that. But then there's also other stuff like in Australia, there's a new thing which is called My Health Records, which is essentially it collects all your health data and it obviously puts it in a database. And essentially, it's obviously meant to be good in terms of, that means doctors can know all your information right away, and all these other health professionals can know all about it. But, there's some catches to that. People can access that data. But I know that, like, it's that idea of, like, well, all your information is there, that means anyone can access it in terms of if they're authorized. The film, anyway, yeah, it definitely does sort of also stem on the idea of, conveniency or, like, safety. Is it better to have all this sort of this safety net so no one really knows what you're doing, but then it's harder to access information? Or is it better to be convenient and have access to all this information, but then remove that safety net? Who knows what people could use over that data. There's a lot of things, identity theft. But also, I guess, the film also does sort of touch on, which I was saying before with, like, the loose connections that May has anyway with people, is the idea of social media interactions. So, people socialize with people online more than people basically in front of you. And I think that is a big thing now, that a lot of people talk to people online rather than talking to people sort of face to face. And that sort of does go into the film with her losing connection with her real friends, and then obviously talking to all these random people online that she has no idea who they are. But there's also there's some moments in the film that are sort of like, you laugh at it a bit. It's like, so that, like, I think it's in one of the workplace rooms or whatever. They talk, like, they're all talking, but they're all talking on their phones to each other. Even though they're right next to each other. It's sort of just like, I guess it's sort of the joke is that, people would rather talk to people online through, like, social media than rather talk to the person face to face. Obviously, that's not really a good thing, because...
Yeah, but I mean,
it sort of loses that touch.
It's also kind of fear-mongering, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's like all those preachy fucking vloggers on YouTube that talk about how social media is... ruining relationships when I don't know, it's not particularly true. I don't particularly believe in it. I don't subscribe to this idea that we're getting less social. If anything, we've got more connectivity than ever. It's just the way that we're communicating has changed. It's not that we're becoming less social.
That's true. Yeah, that is true. But as, like, in the movie it brings that up. But that being said, there's a bit, like, jokey moments like that. There's also some very awkward moments, I would say. There was a moment actually in the film, so this was, I think it was pretty early in the film, probably actually maybe halfway through actually, where May, this is like her first couple of months in the job, or first couple of weeks, and she's doing like whatever work she's doing consulting, but then these two sort of higher ups come over and they talk about the idea that she has to have a more social media presence in the circle. And they sort of talk about like, yeah, you have to, everyone needs to know what you're doing right now at the circle. Everyone needs to know like what activities you're doing right now or what you're going to do. Essentially the circle, like Enna, is that everyone knows what everyone's doing inside it. But these like people come across as these very, I'd say like really awkwardly people. I think it does come across, I think it's meant to come across as sort of this comedy, but I felt really sort of cringy at the moment because they're just like, yeah, you should, everyone does social media here. You should, everyone should know what everyone's doing, everyone, and stuff like that. If you watch it, you'll know. If you've watched it anyway, you'll know what I'm probably talking about. But I think the one thing that I think that would have made the film a little bit better is, and I don't know if this does it in 1984, but obviously the film focuses on a couple of people, and essentially those people are the people within the organization. It doesn't really touch upon outside influences. That being said, they do, the family anyway of May, they get introduced, but they're like the only other outside source of sort of like what they react to this idea of privacy and transparency and stuff. Like there isn't really that sense of what does everyone else think about this, besides the occasional text messages messages on like the live stream. You don't really know anything about them. And I think if the film was definitely trying to get it more across to like normal people, like normal lives, it probably would have done a bit better if it included like some outside sources in terms of like what does this daily person think of it, because really we're led to believe that everyone seems to accept it, because at the end of the film everyone just like it obviously goes, it tries to say that looks like everyone is being transparent now, everyone knows what everyone's doing, but obviously that probably wouldn't be what would really happen. There would be obviously conflicts and stuff like that with that. But I definitely think, I don't know if 1984 does it. If it's more focused on one person, or is it focused on?
It's more focused on actually a couple. So there's a woman and a man, who in a society where relationships are not necessarily shunned, but only supposed to be for the pure purpose of procreation, that essentially realize that they're in love with each other. That's not the entire plot of the story, of course. It's far more than that. But that's when the main character, Wilson, I think his name was, starts really moving away from the societal norms established by the party. But yeah, it was very focused on the fact that the party essentially controlled every part of a person's life, even things like the time that they wake up, their exercise routine, whether or not they literally they essentially banned sex because it was too pleasurable, quote unquote, or something along those lines. And I don't know, it was against some sort of party line, but that was the basic gist.
Yeah.
It focused less, but it was less on a family and more on a couple.
I definitely think like if it definitely got the point across for the circle anyway. It definitely, for me anyway, it made me think about all these things, and it definitely sort of obviously made me think about like, it also makes sort of some people, and I guess even me now, more so in terms of what the film says and stuff, is that maybe you should think about a lot more before what you release online, in terms of privacy, because the internet essentially there's a lot of things it knows about you, really. The film anyway, this sort of the circle film anyway, is a definitely more of a thought-provoking thing instead of like probably enjoying what the actual film is, I feel.
That's a pretty piss poor way of looking at it. art should be enjoyable as well as having meaning. Although that being said, I do think it's wrong to criticize art. I think it's wrong in general to grade art because art can only be determined by. Oh fuck! I had a really smart sounding thing to say here, but I completely forgot what it was. Basically, I just think art shouldn't be a thing that is categorized and graded. When I think that.
Yeah, like
actually no, I remember what I was going to say. I was going to say if art can make a point and bring it across, then you can't really categorize it and rate it based on other art. But at the same time, I do think it should be pretty enjoyable. I mean, even if it only reaches out to a certain amount of people, which obviously this film only reached out to 16% of as long as they got the message, I think that it serves its purpose essentially.
Yeah, I think the film was more focused on the idea, the message it was meant to give. And
it's kind of why, like,
I think it definitely did.
Sorry for butting in here.
Yes,
but I think it's kind of also like why you look at a movie like Starship Troopers, for example, which it came out at a time when what it was saying was extremely unpopular, and it's actually garnered quite a cult following because of the message that it had, which was essentially that, you know, it's had something to do with fascism. Who knows? But just saying that, you know, nationalism. I mean, there's a lot of points in the film where the bugs that they're fighting aren't, you know, it doesn't matter why the bugs are there. It's just the fact that they're fighting them. That's the only thing that matters.
I just remember from that film that really big, weird brain bug that like was like sucking people's heads or something.
And also a guy that died in a training exercise. That's extremely dangerous.
This is off topic, but I think there's there's 3 of them. But I remember there's one where they get like giant mech suits or something, and they take on this.
There's 3 Starship Troopers movies?
Yeah, I think there is, and I think I've watched them all.
Fuck, I haven't even seen any of them. I just watch reviews and pretend I'm smart.
I remember there's like a scene where there's like they're all in like these giant mech suits, and they're fighting down this gigantic alien monster of some kind.
Bro, you sure that is Pacific Rim?
No, it isn't, because you could tell it was Starship Troopers. You can definitely tell.
Barney from How I Met Your Mother in it.
Yeah, but I think it was like, I don't know, but that's another topic. Look, this film, I think it did well in terms of doing the message. It definitely did that, and I think the way that it did the characters in terms of making it so that they're sort of losing connection, in terms of May anyway, like losing connection with people. I definitely think there was obviously decisions that were like, why the heck would you do these certain things? And I think you would think more about these certain things, like especially with the circumstances you're in. I definitely think there's some other people in it who are very rushed, but again, that also is another thing in terms of the story. And I don't think it was a great film. I'd say it's alright, which is, for me anyway, about 5 out of 10, my rating scheme. But I think definitely it definitely made me think, and I think that's a good thing about it. If a film makes me think, obviously there's something good about it. And I think it made me think because of how bad it was, you know, in terms of like how bad a world it would actually be if that were to really happen. And people could say like, well, this is around the corner, but I really don't think it really is at the moment.
I tend to have a pretty hopeful view on it. What I would call essentially the human spirit, I guess, or humanity as a whole.
Like, who knows? There'll be some guy who will somehow make something that might complement both sides and make it all better. But that is a fairy tale. It's interesting. It's an interesting
our
thing.
Opinion on a very complex issue that can't be given justice in 45 minutes.
Yes. God.
2 IT majors talk about a film that they barely know.
Yeah. Look. I'm no professional or anything in any circumstance. I could be just telling a load of crap. This is just what I think about it. So if somebody's
that's the point
like
of this podcast, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just essentially where we let all of our overflowing brain ideas to flow into our.
I'm sorry if
maybe someone might find some sort of inner meaning.
Yeah.
Wow, what they're saying is very intelligent.
Yeah, maybe there's some. Well, actually, there is no. But if there's something, I probably said a couple of wrong things in terms of some things, but definitely. I think, again, as Alex said, it's more of just a chill sort of thing, and just to talk about what we think about it, and the film, it was alright. I think, at the end of these, I'll probably say a rating of it, and, because I did watch it, I'd say, it's probably better, 5 out of 10 for me. Not
That's a
great.
Big old read the book from me.
Not bad. but it was alright because I think the message made up for the bad movie. But, you know...
That's a very...
Like, Tom Hanks in it was good. I think it was pretty good because, you know, who doesn't like Tom Hanks in a movie? What's wrong with you? Where's Forrest Gump 2? Am I right? But,
Forrest Gump.
Yeah, like, that is essentially the review. This went much longer than I thought it would.
It's probably going to do that every week, Ariel, believe it or not.
It probably will do that, depending on what the
thing is. We've been going for an hour and 24 minutes now.
Yes,
we're not even at the wrap-up segment yet.
Longer time. With the reviews anyway, you probably could tell there's a little bit of analysis and a lot more maybe about what is all meant. Yeah, see, I like other people's opinions because
maybe we could have
I don't like my opinions sometimes.
Aviation expert talk about the path of current aviation technology or something along those lines.
Actually, I have an idea what we should watch for the next review. We should watch Top Gun, but that may be the next review. So that is essentially the review for that. There will be a guest next time. The next time, I don't know when the next time is. Maybe it might be the next week, depending on how we feel.
Could be tomorrow.
But for now, it could be tomorrow, depending when this actually comes out.
Or we could record it tomorrow and just release it next week.
Oh yeah, we'll see. Who knows? But for now, it's more of a bi-weekly thing, but maybe next week there'll be a new one out. So you can, whoever's listening, and if you've enjoyed, then you can look forward to us rambling on about more stuff. And with a guest. Not too sure about who the guest is because people are busy, but we will definitely find somebody who will join us.
Yeah.
Who knows who that will be. I guess to wrap up, besides that was essentially that in terms of, it probably will range in terms of how long it will go for. I am not sure. And whoever's still listening, thank you for staying. If it's just
chances
me
are
listening,
you never made it through our ramble about fucking... What was before the talk about the circle? I can't even remember.
Robots
it's that long ago.
And stuff.
So Lego robots.
Lego robots. But look, you can look forward to other chats, and if anyone is listening, you can recommend some things because there's some interesting things out there that maybe would be interesting to talk about.
Hey, and feel free to drop a like for my epic Photoshop picture that I made just for this, and I'm gonna...
I don't know what it will be. Hopefully it will relate to something.
Probably have like Mark Zuckerberg with laser eyes shooting an Australian flag or something along the lines of that. That's what I was thinking of.
Something like that. And for this unnamed podcast, I believe that is everything. Unless you have anything else to say, Alex?
No, I'm good to wrap up. Let's do that.
I don't really know how to wrap this up.
Thanks for listening, fellas.
Catchphrase. I think that sounds boring. Something energetic.
Energetic is a two-player.
I don't know. I don't know. Salutation. No, is that goodbye? That's hello.
Is salutations hello?
Salutations,
Ariel
my friends.
2019.
Goodbye. Auf Wiedersehen.
No. See you later, alligator.
Yes.
That's a classic.
See you later. Yes. Okay,
that's your classic.
This is my classic. See you later, alligator.
Do I have to say in a while, crocodile?
Yeah.
Or does the viewer say that?
Again.
Okay.
We'll do that again. You say the in a while crocodile part.
Okay, just double checking.
Yes. See you later, alligator.
In a while, crocodile.